murder, discharging a firearm in an enclosure, and discharging a firearm in city limits. Jones is being held without bond at the New Hanover County Detention Center. More than 150 Wilmington families displaced by mold issues will have their per diem payments cut in half after a decision by the Wilmington Housing Authority. However, their temporary housing costs at local hotels will continue to be fully covered. The cuts are coming to funds that pay for things like food and transportation. The average family of 5 was getting $1,300 a week for those costs alone. Housing Authority CEO Tyrone Garrett says the numbers were miscalculated early on, leading to that dollar amount. He says if this funding continues, the authority will eventually run out of money. Displaced residents should be moved back into permanent housing by the end of the year. The state's Booze It or Lose It campaign started yesterday and runs through the 4th of July holiday weekend. During each campaign, law enforcement agencies increase the number of patrols and officers in an area and set up checking stations. People caught driving while impaired could face jail time, lose their driving privileges, and pay an average of $10,000 in fines, towing fees, and other expenses. And preparations are underway for WWAY's Senior Expo tomorrow at Independence Mall. Health vendors from all over the community will be showcasing products and services for senior adults. That event is Thursday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. For more on these stories, you can head over to WWAYTV3.com. I'm Matt Bennett. Have a great day.
Happy Wednesday, everybody. I'm WWAY meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with the Storm Tractory forecast. Get ready for an unsettled day ahead in the Cape Fear as our high temperatures still remaining below the average, getting into the low 80s for coastal and inland communities. We'll see our fair share of clouds throughout the day, but the best chance to see widespread rain will arrive as we get towards 3 to 6 o'clock this evening, so keep that in mind if you are going to be out and about this afternoon. As for tonight, mostly cloudy skies in store for us as our temperatures drop back down to the low 70s. Get your full forecast on WWAY and WWAYTV3.com.
This news and weather is brought to you by Two Men and a Truck. For your free quote, go to twomenandatruck.com. twomenandatruck.com.
One Love Tennis started in 2013 to give back to young boys and girls. We now go through 460 kids a week that are learning about life skills, learning to succeed in life through academics and tennis. Putting those two together, if you do them well, you can write your own ticket. To get involved in this program, go to our website, one-love-tennis.org.
As Wilmington's leader in restorative and regenerative medicine, the Frank Institute specializes in health optimization. Simply put, we use in-depth evaluations and lab testing to determine the best treatments for each patient. So whether you're suffering from an unseen hormonal imbalance or a simple vitamin deficiency, the Frank Institute is ready to get you back to better living. Call us at 910-679-8534 or fill out our symptom survey online at frankinstitute.com. Because at the Frank Institute, you live, we help.
Enjoying Big Talker Network is as easy as asking for it. Program your digital home assistants such as Google Home, Alexa, and Siri to stream Big Talker Network content by simple voice command. Enjoy convenient hands-free access to the program whenever you want, however you want by asking for Big Talker.
I guess I have to now. Hey, welcome back to the Asylum, your refuge in a world gone mad. Hey, the Big Talker Live, that sort of thing. Peruse our schedule of content. I'm just looking forward to hitting you with some news. It's going to be hilarious. Download the app for the Android and iOS devices. Send an email with any comments, questions, concerns, compliments, or critiques. We can't get any better without you. And now begins our morning. So once upon a time, NASA sent a thing to the Mars. This is coming out of news18.com. No writer name, no credit, whatever. So we sent this thing. It's a probe. We sent a probe up to the moon, or up to Mars. 19 years after its launch, the Mars Express project, one of the most successful missions launched by the European Space Agency, is finally getting a software update. With the update, Mars Advanced Radar for Subsurface and Ionospheric Sounding, MARSIS, will be able to view beneath the surfaces of Mars and its moon Phobos, in greater detail. The orbiter, which has been probing around the Earth's neighborhood since its launch June 2nd, 2003, has played a key role in all the major recent studies about Mars. Despite running on nearly a 2-decade-old software package, the orbiter played a crucial role in the search for and discovery of signs of liquid water on Mars, including a suspected 20 by 30 kilometer lake of salty water buried under about a kilometer and a half of ice in the southern polar region. Let me get coffee, hang on. All right, Andrea Cicchetti, MARS's deputy PI and operation manager at Istituto Nazionale di Astrofisica, who also led the development of the upgrade, said that it will enable the orbiter to overcome all of its existing limitations. After decades of fruitful science and having gained a good understanding of Mars, we wanted to push the instrument's performance beyond some of the limitations required back when the missions began. Andrea was quoted as saying in the ESA press release operated by INAF, that thing I could not pronounce properly, MARSIS sends low-frequency radio waves towards Mars using its 40-meter-long antenna. According to ESA, most of those waves are reflected from the planet's surface, but there is a significant amount of waves that travel through the crust and are reflected at boundaries between layers of different materials below the surface, including ice, oil, rock, and water. Using these reflected waves, scientists will map the structure below the surface of the Mars to a depth of a few kilometers and study properties such as thickness and composition of polar ice caps and the properties of volcanic and sedimentary rock layers. With the software update, MARSIS will have improved signal reception onboard data processing to increase the amount of quality. Will have improved signal reception and onboard data processing to increase the amount of quality of science data sent to Earth. That's not it. That can't be it. Oh, okay. So the real trick here is I have to let you know this thing's been running Windows 98 the whole time. Yep. Windows 98 been running for 20 years. And it's about to get an update. Isn't that awesome? I thought so. Windows 98 running the Mars probe. The reason why it keeps getting hung up is it can't get around that Minesweeper game, right? Because if you can't clear 3 levels of Minesweeper, you can't get in to do all your scientific stuff. That's how that works. Just thought I'd let you know. Other news that popped up I thought was fun. Let's see. Oh, still not going to give me an author. Smoking Gun. So, who else? The headline is Drug Defendant Makes Terrible Wardrobe Choice. Meth Suspect Nabbed Wearing a I'm Too Good for Drugs t-shirt, which is hilarious. An Alabama man wearing a t-shirt proclaiming I'm too good for drugs was arrested for possessing methamphetamine and narcotic paraphernalia, said the police report. Alan Burnett, 60 years old, was collared Thursday night near his home in Asheville, a small city about 45 miles from Birmingham. If you ain't never been there, you're lucky. Burnett, seen wearing this shirt, was charged with a pair of drug counts and booked into the St. Clair County Jail. He was released early yesterday morning after posting $3,500 bond. At the time of his arrest, his shirt, wearing bright purple t-shirt that declared, I'm too good for drugs. Previously, defendants have been busted while wearing shirts announcing, quote, I love crystal meth, and, quote, who needs drugs? No, seriously, I have drugs. And an Illinois man who was arrested for allegedly possessing the makings of a methamphetamine lab was nabbed wearing a shirt that said, Los Pollos Hermanos. The Chicken Brothers. The fictional chain of fried chicken restaurants was a front operated by a meth kingpin Gus Fring on the TV series Breaking Bad. I don't know, man. I was taught that if you had to go to court for any reason whatsoever, you put on your best. I'm sorry, the downpour has really opened up my sinuses, making this morning that much more entertaining. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, relentless. Relentless. See, yeah, you know, when you go to court, maybe check your wardrobe. Now, if you're getting arrested, you don't really have a lot of Well, I can't read you that one. I'll have to go elsewhere. Oh, this can't end well. Heather Brinkman, coming out of foxweather.com. NASA wants to put a nuclear reactor on the moon. The space agency and the U.S. Department of Energy have selected 3 design concept proposals for a fission surface power system for a demonstration on the moon. Okay, so if anybody's been to Fukushima or Chernobyl or 3 Mile Island, it's not like this is the size of a suitcase. I mean, a nuclear reactor requires a lot of space. The space agency, NASA is one step closer to finalizing nuclear power some 238,900 miles away from Earth. The space agency and the U.S. Department of Energy have selected 3 design concept proposals for a fission surface power system that would be stationed on the moon. The hope is that a nuclear reactor would produce the power needed to operate rovers, conduct experiments, and help support life. Scientists say the concepts for the technology will benefit future exploration under the Artemis umbrella and will be ready to launch by end of the decade. And then you got to put it together. The contracts fund the development of initial design concepts for a 40 kilowatt class fission power system planned to last at least 10 years in the lunar environment and valued at approximately $5 million each. NASA says 40 kilowatts of power is enough to run 30 households for 10 years continuously. Your math is off. I mean, oh, I see. So that was tricky. Saying it's going to last at least 10 years and you're generating 40 kilowatts of power every day for 10 years. 40 kilowatts is enough to run 30 households, and if your fission reactor is on for 10 years, then you can run power for 10 years. Okay, I get it. Because otherwise it's not a per-time basis, right? 40 kilowatts of power is instantaneous. If you're trying to save 40 kilowatts of power for 10 years, you got to put something else in there. So now that we know that the reactor itself is supposed to last 10 years, now we know that we can have power for 10 years. The Department of Energy's Idaho National Laboratory will award 12-month contracts to the following companies to each develop preliminary designs. Lockheed Martin, no surprise, of Bethesda, Maryland. The company will partner with BWXT and Creer. Westinghouse of Cranberry Township, Pennsylvania. The company will partner with Aerojet Rocketdyne. IX of Houston, Texas, a joint venture of Intuitive Machines and X Energy. The company will partner with Maxar and Boeing. The fission surface power project is a very achievable first step towards the United States establishing nuclear power on the moon, said Idaho National Laboratory Director John Wagner. I look forward to seeing what each of these teams will accomplish. Plentiful energy will be key to future space exploration, said Jim Reuter, Associate Administrator for NASA's Space Technology Mission Directorate in Washington. I expect fission surface power systems to greatly benefit our plans for power architectures for the moon and Mars, and even drive innovation for uses here on Earth. The system will be relatively small and lightweight compared to other power systems, you think. Fission systems are reliable and could enable continuous power regardless of location, sunlight, and other natural environmental conditions. NASA says that Phase 1 of the program will provide them with critical information from an industry that can lead to the joint development of a complete flight-certified fission power system. Developing these early designs will help us lay the groundwork for powering our long-term human presence on other worlds, Ruder said. Fission surface power technologies will also help NASA mature nuclear propulsion systems that rely on reactors to generate power and could potentially be used in deep space exploration missions. Which is, interesting, because if your thing goes super critical and explodes, it just explodes into the atmosphere. And, well, I don't think an environmental impact survey is going to be required before operating this system. I could be wrong. But hey, as long as it's there. Yeah. Now, here's the thing that nobody's paying attention to. And it's probably smaller, cheaper, lighter, and better. I don't know. But the moon is in tidal lock orbit, meaning the same face always faces us. And I'm thinking, with that type of stable orbit, it would be sensible to have some solar in a couple of places, because there are places where the sun just isn't going to set on the moon. I need to go back through my model on that, because I'm not awake enough to verify that. But, it should be possible to do some solar stuff as well. But, hey, let's blow the place up with a nuclear bomb instead. I mean, a nuclear power plant that has no problems and works perfectly every time. Right? All right, one more story before a lengthy break, only because I need coffee. And I need to check on the culvert outside. The rain has filled up our front yard. We now have a small boating lake. I either have to drain the clear the culvert and drain it, or post a lighthouse and a pier before I get in trouble. Here's a story coming out of Toronto's Sun from Danette Wilford. A Burger King employee receives a modest goodie bag for 27 years of perfect attendance. If you want to know why people don't want to work for your crap company, here's a good reason. 27 years of showing up at Burger King, perfect attendance. 27 years. Can you imagine when they got him? It wasn't a watch. A Burger King employee who hasn't missed a day of work in 27 years was rewarded, though critics say it wasn't enough. I don't know, man. I mean, reward you to do your job. A video of the unidentified, if you step out, 27 years of perfect attendance at a Burger King, that is pretty remarkable. A video of the unidentified employee showing off a goodie bag he received after nearly 3 decades of perfect attendance was posted on Reddit's A Boring Dystopia page. This man dedicated 27 years of service to Burger King and wasn't even rewarded with the $27 worth of trinkets in his goodie bag, read Fast Rit's caption. The hardworking staffer received a movie ticket, not even one and one. Like, you want to take a friend to a movie or maybe a date. No, you get one movie ticket, one bag of Reese's Pieces, a clear Starbucks tumbler, which somebody probably here's a bag, let's throw in some crap that we don't want. A lanyard, what would you need a lanyard for? What's the lanyard? All access backstage Burger King pass? Is that what anyway. There's a lanyard. 2 pins, like you can get those at the bank. A couple of keychains, you can get those at the bank. And 2 packs of Lifesavers. 27 years for that little goodie bag. That's not a goodie bag, that's an embarrassment bag. The employee appears truly grateful for his goodie bag, which some assume is a gift from his co-workers. And if it was, right, the co-workers are all like, hey, dude's been 27 years, bring something we can throw in a bag to give to him. His gratitude caused mixed reactions in the comments section. While some called it sad, others were enraged about the items he received. Some loved how proud he was of his gift. Because receiving anything is like, wow, this is cool, thanks. And you try not to put it in perspective. Nobody bought anything, one person commented. Those are the giveaway bags offered at special events or by hiring managers. Corporate buys that stuff by the case to give away. Another wrote, and he's so humble and kind about it, he deserves so much more. Which I agree. I think a raise would be one of them. And I'm not sure what the big deal about the lanyard is. That's again, this is all crap. This is all swag crap they throw away anyway. I mean, of course, I would be like the first one to say, all right, $5 and the Starbucks tumbler is yours. Who wants to buy a pen? 50 cents, 50 cents. Do I hear 75, 75, 75, 75, dollar. All right, I hear $1, $10. There's a $10. All right, dollar quarter. There's a very fancy pen given away in a goodie bag. Come on now, come on. $5, $20. Got it. $1 quarter, one and a quarter. Going once, going twice. That's right. That pen is sold for $1.25. And now next up is a bag of Reese's Pieces. Good Lord. And they picked that up at the DG on the way in. And the movie ticket, it's like, now I wonder if it's a legit movie ticket or if it's a ticket stub. I mean, holy cow, they did not do this kid any favors whatsoever. All right. Ladies and gentlemen. Ha-ha, there it is. We're going to be right back on the Asylum after these messages. The Asylum, which is your refuge in a world gone mad. We're going to be back right after these messages. So please don't go nowhere.
Hello, I'm Matt Bennett with WWAY News. Wilmington police have made an arrest in a weekend homicide. It happened Saturday night around 10:45 in the 1500 block of South 11th Street. Officers responding to the scene found 20-year-old Ja'Kai Dakeen suffering from a gunshot wound. He died at the scene. Wilmington police arrested 25-year-old Malik Jones yesterday and charged him with first-degree murder, discharging a firearm in an enclosure, and discharging a firearm in city limits. Jones is being held without bond at the New Hanover County Detention Center. More than 150 Wilmington families displaced by mold issues will have their per diem payments cut in half after a decision by the Wilmington Housing Authority. However, their temporary housing costs at local hotels will continue to be fully covered. The cuts are coming to funds that pay for things like food and transportation. The average family of 5 was getting $1,300 a week for those costs alone. Housing Authority CEO Tyrone Garrett says the numbers were miscalculated early on, leading to that dollar amount. He says if this funding continues, the authority will eventually run out of money. Displaced residents should be moved back into permanent housing by the end of the year. The state's Booze It or Lose It campaign started yesterday and runs through the 4th of July holiday weekend. During each campaign, law enforcement agencies increase the number of patrols and officers in an area and set up checking stations. People caught driving while impaired could face jail time, lose their driving privileges, and pay an average of $10,000 in fines, towing fees, and other expenses. And preparations are underway for WWAY's Senior Expo tomorrow at Independence Mall. Health vendors from all over the community will be showcasing products and services for senior adults. That event is Thursday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. For more on these stories, you can head over to WWAYTV3.com. I'm Matt Bennett. Have a great day.
Happy Wednesday, everybody. I'm WWAY meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with the Storm Track 3 forecast. Get ready for an unsettled day ahead in the Cape Fear as our high temperatures still remaining below the average, getting into the low 80s for coastal and inland communities. We'll see our fair share of clouds throughout the day, but the best chance to see widespread rain will arrive as we get towards 3 to 6 o'clock this evening, so keep that in mind if you are going to be out and about this afternoon. As for tonight, mostly cloudy skies in store for us as our temperatures drop back down to the low 70s. Get your full forecast on WWAY and WWAYTV3.com.
This news and weather is brought to you by Two Men and a Truck. For your free quote, go to twomenandatruck.com. twomenandatruck.com.
We need judges who serve we the people, not self-interested career politicians. This is Jenny Statting, wife of Judge Michael Statting, your conservative candidate for North Carolina Court of Appeals. Michael is a former prosecutor, sitting Republican judge, and a reservist in the United States Air Force. Michael is a lifelong public servant. That is why I'm asking you to remember to vote for Judge Michael Stadding, your conservative candidate for North Carolina Court of Appeals. Paid for by the committee to elect Michael Stadding. Michael Stadding is a reservist for the United States Air Force. Use of job title does not imply endorsement by the Department of Air Force or the Department of Defense.
There has never been a better time to go to college. Class of 2021 high school graduates, you don't want to miss this. You may be eligible to have your tuition and fees covered at Cape Fear Community College for 2 years, beginning this fall through the North Carolina Longleaf Commitment Grant. This is money that does not need to be repaid and covers tuition toward a degree or towards transfer credit to a 4-year school. This is your chance to make it happen at CFCC for free. Find out more at cfcc.edu/NC-grant.
Enjoying Big Talker Network is as easy as asking for it. Program your digital home assistants such as Google Home, Alexa, and Siri to stream Big Talker Network content by simple voice command. Enjoy convenient hands-free access to program whenever you want, however you want by asking for Big Talker.
Oh, you can't be. You're serious about this, aren't you? You silly computer. Okay, fine. There we go. Welcome back to the Asylum. No, it just rained so much over the last couple of days, or over the night, that the culvert in my front yard has, well, I guess some of the kids have clogged it or played Tootsie Foot or something with it, and it's hideous. It's cruising up and filling up into my front yard.
Tootsie Foot? What's that?
Well, you know, when you're playing Tootsie in the front seat or in the front car or front yard, and you're not paying attention to where anything is going, right?
I've never heard the term Tootsie used in that relation.
Neither have I. But then again, this is a fresh morning to me. I'm still having, you know, coffee issues, and
I was just gonna say, have you had your coffee yet today?
Working on it.
That was a good one, though.
Yeah, so yeah, having the rain come up to my front yard is a little nerve-wracking at the moment.
Yeah, I would say that would throw anybody off, and we haven't had any here where I am, so.
You've not been rained on yet.
Not yet. We need it.
It's
we
coming.
Definitely need it. Yeah, I'm not far from the Junction area, so send it out down our way because I know you're up north from us, so.
It'll be there before I am. I have to come down for a show this evening for the Voice in the Pen tonight, which is a lot of fun.
Cool.
Not quite as crazy as last night. I mean, I was expecting. Man, you had to yell at the guy. I felt bad for him there for a minute. It's like, dude, relax.
So I haven't watched the replay yet. Did I turn beet red?
Well, the camera's far enough away that you can't tell.
Can't tell because I was getting really pissed.
It's like, yeah, and part of it is there's a point where you have to concede. If we're here to talk about windmills, don't be bringing something you don't know. Hydrogen. Oh, let's talk about hydrogen. You don't know crap about hydrogen, first of all. Second of all, has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
Right. Plus, on top of it, it was just not respectful. You know, Chemours. He kept, you know, Chemours. Who cares, you know?
We have the expert on bashing Chemours coming on in about a half hour, so...
Yeah, well, and I'll leave it to his more than capable hands, who knows far more than I ever will on it. But, yeah, I had to... I did my best to keep things under control. I failed, I think.
No, you did a good job. It was an interesting display, or I should say, living example of prepared and not prepared. I can understand wanting to disagree or argue or, you know, say your thing, but once you're done with what you said, that's pretty much your entire load. That's your entire argument, right?
Yeah.
So
and they had no facts behind it. It was all pure emotion. I think we talked about that last week.
Yep, and that's the hardest part.
You know, and I wanted to be swayed either way. And to be honest with you, I wasn't either. I'm still like dead in the neutral. I don't know if it's a good idea or not. I really don't. I see
think
pluses and minuses.
Yeah, anything that helps the grid.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm not against wind power, whether it should be offshore. I just don't know. I'm not hearing facts. I hear things like, well, it's going to save money in the long run. Well, what kind of money? Or, where's the cost? I asked the question last night. What's the cost going to be? We don't know yet. Well, why are we doing a plan if we don't know what the cost is going to be?
Well, that's how we got to the moon. There wasn't a whole lot of plan. It's like, hey, we're going to the moon. How? We'll figure it out.
Yeah, I'm going to build a house. What's your budget? Oh, I don't know. Well, I'm just going to build it.
And the next one, I don't know if you caught the news bit this morning. They want to put a nuclear reactor on Mars.
I thought I heard moon. They were going to do something on the moon.
Or moon,
is it
sorry.
Mars now?
Mars is, I have two stories. Mars probe was running Windows 98. It is now running Windows 10. That makes me confident. The other one was NASA putting nuclear reactor on the moon, which I thought is, part of it I think is funny because if you've ever seen a nuclear reactor, they're a little bit bigger than a suitcase.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
I have seen pictures of them. Yeah.
I don't think you're going to launch this like in one payload.
No, they would need several. And what's their reasoning for putting it there?
Oh, you're going to love this. I gotta reload this. Apparently, life requires nuclear power. I didn't know this.
What?
I mean, we've been living on this planet. Yeah.
You mean to tell me that way back in the primordial ooze, when life was first being formed from various chemical reactions, there was nuclear power involved?
There must have been some sort of isotope involved, because according to this sentence coming from NASA, quote, the hope is that a nuclear reactor would produce the power needed to operate rovers, conduct experiments, and help support life. Okay, now I gotta be fair. How else are you going to power the coffee maker?
Well, I wasn't thinking coffee maker, but yeah, I was thinking like generate oxygen and stuff like that.
No, we have trees for that.
Not on the moon.
Well, so
yet,
far.
Anyway.
I mean, I am still not convinced that it isn't made of blue cheese or whatever it was. If you remember that song, the moon is made of.
Yeah, when we were
green
kids.
cheese, blue cheese. I can't remember.
Well, it's funny. I went to the Smithsonian and they have one of the moon rocks there, and you can go up and actually touch it and all this stuff. And I'm like, how do we know this is actually from the moon? Because it doesn't look that much different from a rock you could find.
Same components.
It would obviously have to be, but I was just sitting there going, this could be the biggest scam ever. And no, I'm not one of those conspiracy theorists that thinks it's all fake. But I always was chuckling about that. Like, who's to say the Smithsonian didn't go out and,
Well, did you know that they were selling some of these space rocks?
I do know that. Yes, I've heard about that in the past.
The one, the detritus, the dust, was actually fed to cockroaches. So for $3 million, you get 3 dead, eviscerated cockroaches and a small baggie of powdered substance that is claimed to have been from the moon. I thought that was hilarious. They were going to auction 3 dead cockroaches who were sacrificed. Their job, their entire purpose in life was to eat moon dust and see if they could survive. Well, apparently not, because scientists didn't cut them open. So
why isn't PETA protesting then? They're animals.
That's, I guess it's selective.
Yeah, they are kind of selective on what they like to support.
They only want to go after the ones that are tasty,
are cute and tasty. Yes, and they also they tend to kill more animals than anybody else. They have.
Now, some of it I agree with. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen the testing they do on some of the bunnies, where they put.
Yeah, I have, and some of that, and it's for makeup and stuff.
Right.
My dog's going crazy right now.
Something just went vertical.
My dog's going crazy right now.
Oh, is that what that was?
Yeah, she's racing around the house. So I have my, we're doing the podcast right after this, so we're filming, and so I have everything set up. That's why it looks so crappy behind me.
Oh, okay. That's what it was. You're hiding the guitars.
I am hiding. Well, there's one still showing. Where were we? Oh, cockroaches and bunnies. This conversation's going places I never thought it was going to go today.
I tell you what, the cockroaches have given me great exercise because nothing will make me jump out of my skin faster than an errant feral cockroach finding its way onto my shoe or toe or anywhere near me without warning. Like if he walked in with a trumpet and said, "Hey, I'm a cockroach, I'm coming through," then I've got time to get my bat. But if they just appear, right, you just sort of like react.
Well, I was in bed the other day, and I kept hearing this noise, and I didn't know what it was. And then, I don't know, half hour later, my wife comes in. She's looking on the floor, and I'm like, what the hell are you looking at? I look down, and it's one of them cockroaches laying on its back, half dead. So he was in the bed with me at some point, which, you know, I'm not thrilled about. I'm not afraid of them, but it's like you don't want, like you said, you don't, you know, it's kind of weird
when you're not ready for them, and it's like
Yeah. So it's like,
and then when they fly, oh man, that one really stops my heart.
Except they're not called cockroaches here. They're called, what is it, palmetto bugs, water bugs. I've heard so many different names for them.
Well, they're different types, right? They're all roaches.
I know, but they're still all cockroaches, and they'll be around long after we're dead.
But that's a good heart test.
It is. It is. It'll definitely get the heart racing a little bit, which is not a bad thing, right?
Normally.
You know, the old flight or fight response kicks in. Normally it's supposed to be getting away from lions and velociraptors, but apparently cockroaches have the same effect.
Especially when they pop open them little wings.
And some of the noises they make are...
Oh, man, get me the hell out of here.
Yeah,
not interested in that game.
You know, it's funny you brought up the bunnies and the testing and all that, and it's, you know, when it comes to like health and fitness, people have talked to me about like the testing they do on that. If it's for, say, cancer research or something along those lines, I get it. I have no problem with it. When you're testing whether makeup is appropriate, you know, that to me is just ludicrous.
Well, certainly, if you have to test your makeup to the point that you're jabbing a mascara pen directly into a rabbit's eye, that tells me that your target audience is probably too drunk to be applying makeup in the first place.
You very good point you just made. Or not, let's go with not intelligent enough to figure out how to put it on without jabbing yourself in the eye.
And, you know, as much love to Grandma over there with Alzheimer's and shaking like a leaf. And, you know, yeah, she's going to scribble right under her retina. You know, maybe we shouldn't do that.
Maybe we should just not worry about makeup at that point. I know I wouldn't.
Well, we're men. We don't have to.
No, I've worn makeup before. Have you ever done TV?
Well, when I used to perform in opera with my mother, they would do the full face.
You got to get. Oh yeah, I would, because you know, as you love to point out, I don't have much hair. So you know, I go on TV and the I don't know what you call it. She wasn't a makeup artist. Whatever this woman was, would come over with her little can of powder.
Talcum powder, yeah. It's called matte, so that you can knock the sheen.
The first time, she really didn't even ask me about it. She just kind of go, I need to fix something. Okay, next thing I know, there's a cloud of chalk around me. I'm like, what the frick is going on here? This was 40 years ago. And then after a while, I got used to it because their lights are so bright and it literally does bounce off your head.
Oh, yeah.
So I've worn the makeup. And, you know, they tried sometimes, there's other tricks they pull, and I'm like, no, we're not doing that. But let me fix your color. No, you're not fixing my color.
Yep. Well, go
ahead.
And you had a light duty, right? Like what they would do to us in the opera, because you're trying to look. It's weird, if you don't have enough or the right makeup on, you don't have a face past like the 20th or 30th row.
Uh-huh.
Right. So I'm 9-10 years old singing soprano in the chorus behind my mom, who's one of the stars in this thing. And people want to take pictures. And I'm like, are you out of your mind? No, you're not taking pictures. Oh, you look so cute. No. I look ridiculous up close. From, you know, if you want to take a picture from the theater from 200 feet, 300 feet away, I'll look normal. But good Lord, do not take a picture of me 6 feet away backstage with this stuff on. I'm going to look like Ronald McDonald on a bad day.
You know, it's funny you mention that. So 20 odd years ago, I was playing in the Arena League, Arena Football, and they brought in the Miami Dolphins cheerleaders. Now, from a distance, they look beautiful, right? Up close, now mind you, we're warming up on the field and they're doing their routine. So they're, I don't know, 10, 15 feet away from us, maybe. It wasn't more than like 5 yards from where I was standing. There was a couple of them. They had enough makeup on that would float the battleship North Carolina. It's just caked on.
Oh, and yeah, it's applied with a spatula and a trowel.
I swear to God. And I'm like, why would they do that? But you kind of just brought up why, right? From a distance, it does look good, right?
Yep.
But you see it up close, it's like, oh my God. And I remember that moment vividly. And then the other thing I remember is, they're doing their little kicks and their feet are higher than my head. I'm like, damn. But
hip flexor.
I do remember standing there and I said to one of my teammates, I'm like, are you looking at that? He goes, yeah. It was like heartbreaking almost.
Yeah. And what's weird is, like, in a lot of the cases in theater, when everybody's, doing the cold cream and wiping it off and you end up with these smears, everybody looks like a bad Joker there for a minute. And then afterwards...
Yep. My wife was a clown. She's retired. Like an actual clown.
That's how she puts up with you.
Yeah.
She's already used to working children's parties.
Yeah. She was Snickers the clown. And it would take her, I don't know, 2-3 hours to put on that makeup.
Before the nose.
And then, do the show or the party or whatever. And then it took like an hour to get it all off. I remember when you said cold cream, that's what triggered it. That Noxema cold cream.
I will never forget the smell of that stuff.
Oh, it's disgusting.
Oh, man. And then in the green room, when everybody's back into civilian clothes, you're like, you can't recognize anyone because now they look like normal people.
Yeah, like I used to say to my wife when she got dressed up as a clown, I'm like, who are you? Every once in a while, we post a picture on Facebook.
Yeah, I'm glad that we didn't have the proliferation of digital cameras back in the... This would have been, 72, 74, somewhere back in there. It's like, yeah, somebody going to sketch that.
I'm so glad there weren't cameras in the 80s when, I had hair 3/4 of the way down my back, permed and flaming red.
Permed. See, that was something I just could not spend my money on. All my buddies were getting hair perms and, $30 a month or $30 a week, rather, on Aquanet. The extra hold pink can, which is fine. Everybody looked great. It was like, I really like to run, I want my hair to behave, not...
Well, I didn't have to pay for it because my aunt happened to be a beautician or stylist or whatever you want to call them these days. Hairdresser was the term back then. So, I mean, she would do the perms for free. She actually loved doing it on me.
Until now, I had never seen naked hair.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure about hair dressing.
I had that. I had that Robert Plant rockin' look there for a while, but not that I could sing because I can't sing. But
that had to be a riot to watch you tackle somebody with locks like that. It would have been like Palomalu or whatever his name is, right?
Yeah, that's what you did. You would not man bun it, but basically just stuff it in the helmet, And then my helmet was like 2 sizes too big for me.
Oh, that's why you wouldn't crush the curls.
Right. So, it would look like crap on the football field. And then that night I'd go play a gig somewhere, It was, thank God there weren't cell phones back then. Because let me tell you, there'd be some really bad pictures. Unfortunately, there are no pictures because my ex-wife burned them all.
Good girl.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
She was trying to get back at me, and I'm like, yeah, I don't really have a problem with you.
Yeah, you just saved my political career going forward.
If I ever, not that I would ever run for office, because frankly, I don't like people. But
which is fair.
Thank God. Huh?
Well, it's like the Grinch. The Grinch didn't hate Christmas. The Grinch hated people and their hypocrisy crap every holiday season where suddenly it's like Christmas spirit. What about the other 364 days of the year? What, just...
See, I am the Grinch then, you know?
Well, most of us are, I think, right? Because after age, I don't know, 30, 35, and you've been dealing with stupid people, and it's like, you know what, I've had enough. So for the next 30 years, right, it gets worse. So for the next 30 years, you're just like, what's my exit?
I used to be my house was with my kids. We were the place to go in the neighborhood. We had sleepovers literally every weekend for 20 years, all that stuff. And now it's get off my lawn, kid. I don't want any kids near me.
Yeah, I did that phase. We're done.
Yep. I flipped that switch, and it happened right around 50, like right at that time. It was like a switch flipped, and now I'm like, get away from me, kids. If I go to the beach, I try and avoid the kids, and the kids are just having fun. You know, my wife gets mad at me about it, but it's like, no, I just want to chill. I don't need to hear the noise.
And I guess
play Tootsie.
Tootsie Foot. So I don't mind that they're running around having fun, but like the other day, I had a neighbor, which, you know, she's a nice person overall, but I'd only seen her once before, and she just walked right up to me, hammered out of her skull, and just started talking to me randomly about stuff, and I'm like, I'm not a licensed therapist, ma'am. About 10 minutes later, it was like this flash of clarity, and she just kind of blinked, turned around, and just walked off, didn't say another word, and I think she was, at that point, realizing that she had overshared a little bit, and I'm just like, I got nothing.
Now you need to see her when she's not imbibing and see what she'll probably avoid you like the plague.
Oh
now,
man,
right?
Yeah, she was walking the other dog the other day outside across the down the street and waved at her, and her pace quickened.
I would go chase her down and say, "Hey, how you doing?"
Nah, there's something about the boyfriend
creepy,
is her boss and is buying her car, and they're sharing a house, and he's moving out, and I'm like, why is this information coming to me?
Because they need it to
I'm not going to.
unload
The only decision I'm going to make on this is how far back I'm going to step.
It's funny you bring that up. It's one of the things as a trainer, we spend more time being psychotherapists than anything else. And it's every trainer deals with it, right? We chuckle about it, but once people get comfortable with you, I mean, if they're trusting you to make sure they're doing things right and trying to make them bodies healthier and all that, they'll unload. And I don't mind it. I actually enjoy it to a point.
It's certainly a level of trust.
It is. And I want to help people. I genuinely do. But there are times they overshare, and it's like, I don't need to know that part of your life. And no, I'm not a licensed psychiatrist. Now, I mean, if I've had instances where it's genuinely a serious issue, and I have psychologists, therapists on that I can refer people to, and I will. I'll just simply say, look, I hear what you're saying, but this is out of my realm, out of my scope of practice, whatever, and then I'll refer them. Those instances, I have no problem with those. But telling me your sex life for the past 4 days, and I've had that happen. It's like I don't need those details. Okay, great.
Have you ever had somebody like take out their frustrations on the weight machine?
All the time. Well, I do that too. So.
Oh, okay. So that's a fair, legit thing.
Yes, it is. That's one of the best. We've talked about that before. It's one of the best ways to get stress out. If I'm feeling stressed, I'm pumping some iron. I'm slamming weights. That kind of stuff. So yeah, and I don't have a problem with that as long as they're being safe and not going to break the equipment. But those racks or the machines where they have the racks of weights and you move the pins on them.
Right.
I've seen people smash those weights.
And they snap in half right where that pin goes.
Or they go flying too sometimes if you do it right. And the problem is those things are extremely expensive. So gym owners get really mad when you do that.
Because you have to disassemble the whole thing to put in one weight plate.
Oh, it's a time suck for sure. But
I saw that happen at college a number of times where they had to disassemble a machine.
Getting the plate takes a while unless you have spares lying around, which the Y had a few, but it was never the one we needed. It was.
It's like breaking a guitar string and all you have are low E's.
Yeah, I mean, it was like it would never be like the 10-pound or the 20. Oh no, it was like the 80. So you had to take half the stack off, and hope you could find one. Even though they're all weigh basically the same, it's just getting to it was a pain in the butt. And of course, they're marked, so you couldn't put a 10 in the 80 slot. And
they have to fit according to the little guide post, right? Because they have a pinning hole and then the guide, so they don't slide.
Yep.
The machines themselves are actually pretty remarkable from an engineering standpoint.
Oh,
that's all I could do with them, right? After high school, next time I went into a weight room, I was like, this is fascinating.
I would love to get you in a weight room.
Have you ever seen a twig snap?
That's what I want.
I like my bones the way they are. My skeleton functions.
I can not to pick on you too much, but I'd hand you a barbell and watch you fall over when you grabbed it.
I twirled that thing like a baton. Are you kidding?
Yeah. Well, hey, if you play Gibson, you've been lugging around.
Hello, my ragtime doll.
If you've been playing a Gibson long enough, you've been lugging around a 20-pound guitar.
Oh, I got a 6-string bass that makes a Gibson look like a toy.
Oh, there you go. So, as we all know, certain things weigh certain. That's why I play a Strat.
That's why I'm no longer married to my ex.
Why? She got too heavy?
Oh, that got real heavy. It became a safety issue. I love you, honey, but if you fall on top of me, we're both going to die.
Okay, you remember how I was just talking about those oversharing?
Well, I just, you were asking. I just had to put it into some sort of perspective, something you can relate to.
I can relate to that.
It's like a Smith machine with arms and bad breath.
Oh, wow.
I don't think she's listening to the show, so I fear no
I was just saying, let's make sure my ex's note that it's him saying this. This would be TK saying it, not me.
Oh, so let me guess. There was a parallel between your ex and my own.
The first one, yes. The second one, I get along great with her. I had no problem with her. The first one is called Satan for a reason.
Did you find it difficult to pass Tic Tacs over?
If I had
that caused problems in our life, right? Because it's every now and again, honey, I love you. Halitosis is a known condition. Tic Tac is the best thing we got right now. So,
and then my current wife is the exact opposite. If she even suspects it, she'd run to the bathroom, brush her teeth, then come back to bed. It's like whatever, And you find the right one, it works really well. And third time was the charm for me. So
there is a little bit there's a little caveat to your hating people. There has to be a couple of things that you enjoy, so that the general population I get, but one or two people stand out, and you can tolerate them for 7 to 10 minutes.
I have a couple of good friends, but in general, though, trying to be a politician, you think about their life. They're on stage 24/7. They got to be up to all hours. They'll never admit this, but they have to go to events that they have no interest in going to and pretend that they're happy being there. A
Toys R Us grand opening. Oh, yay.
Yeah. Or it's 95 degrees July 4th, and instead of being with your family, you're stuck in some parade somewhere on the back of a convertible in a suit because, God forbid you show up in a polo shirt on some of these. I wouldn't last 5 minutes as a politician. And the other thing is I would make Trump look like an innocent choir boy with my tweets. So, because I have zero tolerance for hypocrisy, and I point it out all the time.
And I have absolutely no tweet at all. I don't.
Well, I got tossed off Twitter, so they banned me. Eventually, it was the final straw. Was when was a couple of years ago. They were, or however long it was, they started coming out with the vaccine, and I put up, this thing's not tested, and there's no proof that it will stop you from catching COVID. I got banned for that, for spreading misinformation. They still haven't unbanned me. I don't know why.
Well, you should apologize to Dominion Voting, and maybe it'll all go away.
I mean, it's like, and I didn't care at that point because it was probably the best health thing for me to do was to get off Twitter, because when Twitter first came out and social media in general, it was cool, right? I like to be on Twitter for sports because all the sports information, if you're watching a football game, they put facts up. That was fun. And then it just went like around there, 2016, it just went pure political and a cesspool. Kind of like Facebook is now. Facebook used to be cool, right? It was, here's what I'm eating. And, everybody would go, God, do not show me another picture of your plate. Now I think people would love to see that.
Well, a number of restaurants have actually started a policy. If you're going to take pictures of your food, go away. Because we're trying to flip these tables, and the longer you take taking pictures and posting, right, you're not eating, you're wasting my flipping time. Eat and get the hell out. You don't stay for an hour. You eat, you go home.
And then the other side of it is your picture doesn't look as good as the one they've had the professional photographer come in and do.
Yeah, you're not doing the restaurant any favors by saying, oh, look at this scrumptious meal that I've half dived into.
I always laugh about the Big Macs and the fast food chains. Have you ever seen the burger or whatever you've gotten from them actually look like what's in the advertisement?
What is it, falling down? Do you remember the scene where the guy goes into the burger shop?
Yeah.
That's one of my favorites. It's like, this is not what I ordered. I want that.
I want it to, yeah. And then, what you don't realize is half the time it's actually not even food they're taking a picture of. It's foam rubber that they put together. I heard about
paint.
that one.
We used to have incense burners to be the little wisp of smoke and steam.
Yep.
Oh,
and then, I have trainer friends who work with like the models and the celebrities and all that, and they share. They're under NDA, so they can't say who it is and all that stuff. But they'll share information like you wouldn't believe this one, and how remember the thigh gap was a big thing a couple of years back. It's all airbrushed. There's no such thing as a thigh gap. So
if it's a thigh gap, that's
actually a physiological issue.
I was gonna that's not
nothing you want.
Running, jumping, skipping would be out of the question.
Yeah, it is an issue. And like I have one friend, he's a trainer out in Hollywood. He calls them C-level celebrities. So it's not the superstars. It's the ones you kind of sort of know they're celebrities, but they're not that big. And again, he doesn't share any names because he's not allowed to, but he just shares their stories of how they act and all this stuff. And I just die laughing, and it's all show. They don't look like they do. Like if you see them in the theater, and they're looking good there, they look good then while they're filming. But the minute that's over, they go right back and they look like us.
Yep.
When he trains them, it's funny. He's on call. Like he'll go to a movie set. He gets paid $5,000 a week, by the way. I wish I could get into that. But if they're filming to say 2 a.m. and the celebrity wants to train at 2:05, he's got to train him at 2:05. So he's on call 24/7. So it's we're getting off track here, but it's kind of a fascinating thing to see that people look at those people, think they look like that all the time, and they don't.
Yeah, that's a fallacy of, comparing yourself to somebody else's greatest hits.
It is. And then what happens is it leads to mental issues for a lot of people because, I want to look like, pick your celebrity. You can't look like them because
genetics.
It's not even just genetics. That is part of it. But, you're looking at a photo in a magazine, not realizing that, they trained with a trainer and had a personal chef for 3 months to get to that point. They have a ton of makeup on, like we've talked about. And it's been airbrushed, photoshopped, and all that other stuff to make them look good. You're trying to live up to a fantasy that doesn't exist. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that fall into that. And then as a trainer, we've got to deal with it. And you can sit and tell them, look, so-and-so, There was a celebrity, I forget who it was, like 3-4 years ago. She shared her before after pictures before they photoshopped them, and then what it looked like afterward. And kudos to her for doing that. It was night and day. I mean, I actually thought she looked better before they photoshopped her. But you know, I get primarily women, but guys do it too. They'll even bring me photos. I want to look like her. Yeah, that's not going to happen. And then they get mad at me for it, you know. Well, why can't you make me look like that? Because I can't Photoshop your body.
Alchemy isn't real.
Yeah, it's, you know, and, you know, hey, I guess if you did a bunch of meth, you could get really thin like that person, but I don't think you want to be doing that for health reasons. So.
Yeah, if you switch to cocaine and drink a lot of water, it might be safer. I don't. But what's interesting is the two combos that you're talking about here. Well, it's a combination, and it's from our French friends, our Parisian friends, who introduced makeup and perfume to our culture on the planet, which leads me to believe that French women were ugly and smelly.
I got to be careful what I say here.
And now what's interesting, and it has taken over the planet. So, you know, Estee Lauder and all these companies, you know, the biggest sector in consumer goods besides food is vanity. Makeup, hair, nails, podiatry, all that is way outselling things like, you know, ace bandages, you know, footstools. It's just to me, it's an incomprehensible balance that we have such an issue with our self. We're the only creature on the planet that does that has this self-image that we're in constant battle with.
Yeah. I mean, you think about it, many times I've had conversations with women that I can't afford a trainer, you know, it's too expensive. But yet they've got makeup that costs them, you know, $400 for one application of whatever, or that $500 purse that they had to go buy, or 5 million pairs of shoes
that don't fit,
and so on and so forth. It's whoop. You kind of bounced on me there.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on here. I'm getting all kind of error messages on my side.
I was to say, it's not me, is it? I don't think so. I'm looking good here. I'll take over the show for you.
Yeah, I think the poor machine I need to pay money when using free software. That's
or you need to reboot. There's the IT director in me, that my former career. When in doubt, reboot, right?
Or if you're on Mars with a probe, you update the software from Windows 98.
Hey, don't be dissing Windows 98. That was one of the few good ones.
Well, what's funny is when they were talking about it in the article, I need to get the actual data. Come on. Here you go. There we go.
Sounds like you're having a memory issue.
I don't know if that's my memory. What they're claiming is that the update is going to push the instrument's performance beyond some of the limitations required back when the mission began. I find that difficult to believe because the sensor doesn't change, so it's going to be sending that data. The ability to there's something about that that's just not quite adding up. According to this, with the software update, Marsus will have an improved signal reception. That's not controlled by the computer. That's controlled by, you know, by your amplifier. Let's see. And onboard data processing to increase the amount and quality of science data sent to Earth. What do they do? Like extend the decimal point? Because the data is going to be Sorry?
They went from Windows 98 to, what was it, Windows 10?
I think they're at ME now.
We will not talk about
I don't know
ME.
what they're running. They just said upgrade.
I mean, the hardware differences to run them, there's no way they went from 98 to, say, Windows 10. It's not possible. The hardware would never be able to handle it. I don't care. The top-of-the-line processor, when Windows 98 came out, you know, our cell phones are hundreds of times actually faster than those.
Right.
So there's no way it's running Windows 10. I ain't buying that one at all. Or
we're at Windows 99.
even Windows 7 wouldn't run on it. I mean, and Windows 7 end of life. So, yeah, something ain't right there. Now, if they're doing a stripped down version of it, okay, maybe, but they didn't say that, right?
No, I think what it is, for anybody that's been in the business, it's not an actual software update. It's what they call a server patch.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So I don't think they upgraded it. I think they released a buttload of patches.
But why would you say you went from Windows 98 to, I mean, come on.
Well, I'm saying, because they're not saying where they went as far as receiving software update. With Windows 98 receives a software update, it doesn't say what the update is. It just says it's getting updated and it's going to do all these magical things. And I'm like, can you do that to my computer? That'd be really cool. And I live right here on terra firma.
I wonder what they could do with Voyager then. Could they bring that up to Windows 11?
Well, if they can get past the Minesweeper game, that's apparently their security block at the moment.
Yeah, maybe.
It's either...
I don't know.
Because that was weird. Every other computer shipped with a version of, Solitaire and maybe Chess. And then Windows comes along and brings a game that nobody ever wanted. And it's massive. No, it's 48 megs wide. And it's hey, here's Minesweeper. Enjoy.
And yet I caught so many people playing it at work.
Because the Solitaire game was pure crap. It's well, at least I can play this.
We used to have to
did you get the cell phone with Snake?
No.
I had one of the flip-top cell phones that had a video game in it called Snake. And every time
Never heard.
Yeah, it's one of the most useless games ever. But it's showing, it's the nascent flip phone technology that, hey, we can do more than talk. We can play video games. It's the most useless video game ever, but at least,
yeah.
we got to start somewhere.
And look where we are now. And I don't know that it's a good thing that we've progressed the way we have. In fact, I'd say I wish I could go back to those flip phones and all them because life was a lot easier. I'd rather carry a pager, I think, than I used to for years. Sometime.
Back in the day, man, a pager could get you anywhere.
Oh, you were rocking if you had a pager, and I
was working in a computer lab, had short hair, and wore little polos and khakis around most of the time, and I could be at a show somewhere, and if I needed to get out or backstage or just get the hell away from people, I'd look down at my pager and I'd look up and say, "I just got paged with a medical emergency," yep. And they're like, "Oh my goodness, let me," and it's oh, thank God, let me out of there.
I can't deny that I've used the same opportunities at times. More than once, especially when my wife was pregnant. That was great. Oh, I gotta go. I was in some business meeting, and I'm like, I gotta get out of here. So I reached down, grabbed my pager. She's having an issue. Maybe I gotta go check on it. And then I just left the meeting. It was
they got her on the gurney. I gotta go. Bye.
So yeah, later on, it was it was false alarm.
Everything's fine, but you never know.
She just, it was one of that Braxton Hicks contractions. That's what it was. Wow, there's a term I haven't said in 20 years, literally.
Well, once one of your children gets into that position, you'll be fully prepared to warn him about it and scare the piss out of him. That's my favorite thing to do is when something is going to be benign and gentle and no big deal. Right? I do this with people coming on the show all the time is I do everything I can to absolutely terrify them.
Really?
Yeah, so by the time they start the experience, they're like, wait, there's no bruise. This doesn't hurt.
See that?
You get them so nervous that they're like, oh my God. And then they're like, that was fine.
People do get afraid of, public speaking in general, and I guess I didn't get that, Gene, because I've never had a fear of any of that. Being on a camera or talking in front of 1,000 people or playing in front of 1,000 people, I just tend, you're on stage, you're playing, you snap two strings, it is what it is, right? I would laugh, and I've been in bands where a guy snapped a string and just completely lost it, basically threw the guitar. I'm like, it's a string, who cares? But
it's not so bad unless you're on a tremolo guitar. On a bass guitar, snap a string, it's like, man, you earned that.
If you can snap a bass string, you are doing something right. I'm looking up at my bass over here right now. I'm like, I haven't changed those strings in 10 years. They must sound really good.
I don't think Nathan East has done that either.
He's like one of my favorite basses, by the way. I love him.
He just had a online clinic the other day, dude. It was sick.
Oh, did he? He's playing with Clapton on tour, isn't he?
I believe so. I forgot where he's at now, but he was working with Nathan was working with Victor and another cat I can't think of. But anyway, it was incredible experience.
Yeah,
Thank God for online.
Yeah, it's funny how a lot of those guys now are starting to share their knowledge, and I'm glad they are. Because I'm fascinated by it even now. You know, I don't gig anymore. I'm not in any bands. But I love getting into it. And my knowledge of musical theory is none, right? But I get fascinated seeing what these guys can do and the knowledge they have. And some of them are like, yeah, I don't know what this note is. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but I know to play this, you know. It's really cool when you see that. But yeah, Nathan's one of my favorite. I saw Clapton many times, and he's always played bass with Clapton for 30 years now, 40 years maybe. And I was fairly close to seeing him on stage and just watching him. Really talented man.
Yep. Well, dude, we're at 9:15. I need
Holy
to get
crap.
You have a podcast to do.
This. You got other guests too, right?
Yep. And I still need to make some more coffee. But man, it's been a wonderful morning. If I don't see you before Tuesday, I'm sure we will be conversing at some point.
Don't forget, next week I'm on vacation, so you won't see me Tuesday or Wednesday. You'll have to work without me next week.
Oh man. Okay, I
Planning?
guess. Yeah. All I can think of is going to clean the culvert in my front yard.
There you go.
So yeah, you enjoy your vacation, and I'll be knee deep in the culvert. How's that?
Sounds like a plan, my friend.
Well, then next time, or you can call in while you're on vacation. You can always do that.
My wife has told me if I do anything work related, I'm a dead man. So
This isn't work related.
I am deleting apps off my phone. I've already removed most of my social media off my phone. We're going off the grid for an entire week.
If you're going to do that, just leave the phone at home.
Well, in case of emergencies, we need to have one, or we may, like, one of us may leave our phone home, so we just have one.
In case of emergency, use the flare gun.
Yeah. Or send smoke signals. Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to take a quick break. You are going to have some fun. I'm going to go get more coffee. And watch this.
All right.
I love the new push button stuff. This is awesome. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the Asylum will be right back after these messages and a cup of coffee. Please don't go nowhere. We will see Dan Romand when he gets back. Probably not looking the same with a whole new dose of makeup on. We'll see what that's like. Oh, no, it'll be a new physique. That's it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back. Please don't go nowhere. The Asylum, your refuge in a world gone mad. Be right back.
Keeping Southport informed. The Big Talker 106.7 FM WFBT, Carolina Beach.
Paid for by the committee to elect Judge Michael Stadding. As a member of the United States Air Force, I stand for our nation. As a prosecutor, I took a stand against violent criminals. As an attorney for the Fraternal Order of Police, I took a stand for law and order. As a sitting conservative judge, I stand for our Constitution. And as a judge on the Court of Appeals, I will stand up for you. Vote for a battle-tested conservative. Stand with Stadding. Michael Stadding is a reservist for the United States Air Force. Use of his military rank, job titles does not imply endorsement by the Department of the Air Force or the Department of Defense.
Teachers and parents, the North Carolina Symphony is here to support you as you carry on the education of your children and students. Take your kids on a free virtual field trip to the Symphony with a virtual education concert and companion student book. Go on a virtual journey to learn what makes music music with music by William Grant Still, Beethoven, Brahms, and more. Access the free video and student book with password 1932 at ncsymphony.org/virtual.
Hello, I'm Matt Bennett with WWAY News. Wilmington police have made an arrest in a weekend homicide. It happened Saturday night around 10:45 in the 1500 block of South 11th Street. Officers responding to the scene found 20-year-old Jakai Dakeen suffering from a gunshot wound. He died at the scene. Wilmington police arrested 25-year-old Malik Jones yesterday and charged him with first-degree murder, discharging a firearm in an enclosure, and discharging a firearm in city limits. Jones is being held without bond at the New Hanover County Detention Center. More than 150 Wilmington families displaced by mold issues will have their per diem payments cut in half after a decision by the Wilmington Housing Authority. However, their temporary housing costs at local hotels will continue to be fully covered. The cuts are coming to funds that pay for things like food and transportation. The average family of 5 was getting $1,300 a week for those costs alone. Housing Authority CEO Tyrone Garrett says the numbers were miscalculated early on, leading to that dollar amount. He says if this funding continues, the authority will eventually run out of money. Displaced residents should be moved back into permanent housing by the end of the year. The state's Booze It or Lose It campaign started yesterday and runs through the 4th of July holiday weekend. During each campaign, law enforcement agencies increase the number of patrols and officers in an area and set up checking stations. People caught driving while impaired could face jail time, lose their driving privileges, and pay an average of $10,000 in fines, towing fees, and other expenses. And preparations are underway for WWAY's Senior Expo tomorrow at Independence Mall. Health vendors from all over the community will be showcasing products and services for senior adults. That event is Thursday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. For more on these stories, you can head over to WWAYTV3.com. I'm Matt Bennett. Have a great day.
Happy Wednesday, everybody. I'm WWAY meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with the Storm Track 3 forecast. Get ready for an unsettled day ahead in the Cape Fear as our high temperatures still remaining below the average, getting into the low 80s for coastal and inland communities. We'll see our fair share of clouds throughout the day, but the best chance to see widespread rain will arrive as we get towards 3 to 6 o'clock this evening, so keep that in mind if you are going to be out and about this afternoon. As for tonight, mostly cloudy skies in store for us as our temperatures drop back down to the low 70s. Get your full forecast on WWAY and WWAYTV3.com.
This news and weather is brought to you by Two Men and a Truck. For your free quote, go to twomenandatruck.com. twomenandatruck.com.
O'Leary's Automotive Repair has multiple locations in the area in Hampstead, Leland, the Myrtle Grove area, Ogden, and Wrightsboro. O'Leary's Automotive Repair, a trusted, locally owned business since 2006.
Folks, the sad truth of it is most of what we're seeing in the news cycle is just noise, and it's recycled noise at that. Nothing informative, nothing that actually helps us discern the times that we live in. That's why we started doing Heard Tell. Every morning right here on Big Talker Network, 7 a.m. with a replay at 3 p.m., we talk and discuss the issues of the day, culture and politics with knowledgeable guests, no yelling, no caterwauling, just grown folk talk about the issues that matter. Join me, Andrew Donaldson, every weekday morning for Heard Tell.
Uh-oh, Brad's buzzed.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he's starting with the woots. And now a speech.
I just want to say that friendship is about heart and brain. Who's with me?
Good thing is, he knows when he's buzzed.
And my brain is saying, when it's time to go home, somebody call me a ride.
Love that guy.
Me too.
Know your buzzed warning signs? Call for a ride when it's time to go home. Buzz driving is drunk driving. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Hey, welcome back to the Asylum, your refuge in a world gone mad, right here on the Big Talker Network. And joining us now is the one of the smartest people I know, Dr. Larry Cahoon. The man knows more about water than the rest of us could ever possibly hope to know. And I'm glad to have you back this morning. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing okay. Glad to be here.
I was reflecting yesterday on the miracle of water's characteristics of temperature control.
Yes.
That is, if something's a little hot, you just take a little wet rag and just lay it on top and let the water absorb the heat. Because apparently you don't need to boil water for water to evaporate and take energy with it. It's amazing.
Correct. What we call the latent heat of evaporation.
That's the official term.
That's the official term, the latent heat of evaporation. A tremendous amount of energy is absorbed by water when it changes from its liquid state into its gaseous state, water vapor. And so that's the cooling effect. That's why we sweat. Sweating allows evaporative cooling. And the flip side of that is that's why people who are out exposed to the weather, like your friendly local duck hunters, I being one of them, sort of experience hypothermia. You get out and get wet, and it's nice and windy, which makes for a good duck hunting day. And the evaporative cooling chills you right down.
Oh, yeah.
So sometimes that's beneficial, as when it's super hot out, and sometimes it's deadly, as when it's already cool.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be below freezing for people to experience hypothermia.
All you got to do is lose heat. Whatever is losing, taking your heat away.
Yeah. Right. You are supposed to keep your body temperature around 98.6 Fahrenheit. And if you get several degrees below that, your core body temperature, that is, you begin to get into trouble. We call that hypothermia, and it's bad. Most people, I think, are aware of it. You start to shiver, which is an indication that you're getting chilled, and you should do something about that. So
now, you sent an email earlier this week, and I have to ask because I'm not sure I understand what it is. We've had some discussion on the offshore wind turbines, but I'm not sure exactly what sand mining is. And apparently, frying pan shoals is a very personal place for people. What's up? What's the story on this?
Yeah. So, frying pan shoals is an interesting location for a lot of reasons. And of course, the wind turbine issue has been out there in the public for quite a while. And it's lately gotten a lot more attention. The Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, BOEM, is looking at sand resources for beach nourishment.
Now, nourishment is going to throw me off. I just don't see a beach eating.
That's the term they use. To nourish the beach is to add more sand to it after the waves and so forth have washed that sand away.
And we're just going to appropriate nouns and verbs at random.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, nourishment is the term. That's the term of art in the business. And so North Carolina has about 300 miles of ocean beach, and slightly more than 100 miles of that ocean beach is regularly nourished, regularly being anywhere from 3 to 10 years, depending on conditions, permitting and all that. A lot of the beaches in our area are nourished fairly often. Carolina Beach, Wrightsville Beach are two classic nourishment projects. There have been nourishment efforts made up and down the coast, of course, and that the driving force there is to keep the beaches from eroding back to where the houses are.
Which is what would happen if the planet was left alone.
Yeah, exactly. If we didn't nourish those beaches, beach erosion would eventually eat away those beach communities. You may have all seen the video of houses collapsing up at Nag's Head this past May in a northeaster, and that's what happens when you don't nourish a beach. Now, I'm not blaming the beach nourishment regime on those. Those houses were in a very high erosion environment, and the owners.
We were building where we shouldn't.
I'm kind of laissez-faire about that sort of thing. You build a house on the beach, and there's a fair chance it won't be there in 10 years, at least in a place like that. In other communities, like Wrightsville Beach and Carolina Beach, we have regular beach nourishment projects, and the aim is to protect those communities from heavy storm damage, from hurricanes and all that. the more beach you have in front of you, the longer your beachfront will last in a big storm. But also, let's face it, tourists who want to come and sit on the beach need to have a beach there to sit on. Who knew?
Funny how that works out.
Funny how that works, yeah. And so you don't want a real narrow, steep beach because you can't fit very many people on it very happily. And so you want to nourish to keep the tourists coming back and keep your property values up. The problem is that sand resources are getting harder and harder to find. When we nourish the beaches, what we know is that, they last for a while, and the wave action, especially in big storms, washes away that sand. Well, it often goes into places where we can't get it back. Some of that sand just slides offshore into very thin layers that we can't really exploit again. In other cases, it moves down the beach into places where it forms a pile, and we can then mine that sand, bring it back up on the beach, and so on. But because sea level's rising, because hurricanes have been more frequent in the last couple of decades, we're seeing more and more demand for nourishment on our beaches. And at the same time, there are fewer sand resources out there that we can tap to support that nourishment activity. So the federal government, and they're certainly being encouraged by the states, they're looking at other sand resources. And the big ones in North Carolina are the Cape Shoals, Frying Pan Shoals and Cape Lookout Shoals in particular. Frying Pan's interesting because, number one, there's a lot of sand there, and number two, it's close relatively to the Brunswick County beaches and the New Hanover County beaches, which need more and more sand put on them to sustain them. So in the long run, and I emphasize that, in the long run, they're taking a look at the possibility of using the sand resources that they have off the Cape Shoals as a source of sand for beach nourishment.
So
it's
really
a very
is
large resource.
It's actually sand mining, just like mining gold or silver. You're actually digging for sand.
Yep. You dig up the sand and you transport it to the beach where you need to put it. And that's what they're thinking about. And as time goes on, the forces at work here are going to create more and more pressure to use resources like that. The alternative, I'm not sure there is one, unless you like the idea of the beaches eroding away and the beach communities being eventually destroyed. I'm not sure anyone advocates that at this point. The other option would be to create seawalls, right? Well, North Carolina learned from the example of my home state, New Jersey, which tried that strategy back in the 1950s. And what you have is a lot of rocks on your beach.
And a wall.
At great expense. Yeah, that's right. You have a wall. And there's not much beach, and when you body surf and don't pay attention, you hit a rock with your head, which is bad.
That is counterindicated on my operations manual.
North Carolina has rejected the seawall approach to fixing beach erosion. In most cases, there are a few exceptions, but by and large, that's not the strategy we've chosen. We've chosen nourishment. And that means we have to dig up more sand. So anyway, where we are in the process is that BOEM has issued a request for proposals to look at the ocean physics, biology, and geology of the Cape Shoals to get some idea of what kinds of resources might be affected by sand mining. So
now, sand
very
mining,
early in the process.
When digging up sand, I mean, it's like the simple-minded person that I am would think, hey, we have to dredge the channels anyway. Why not just use what we dredge and drop that on the beach?
Sometimes that dredge material is not of beach sand quality. Sometimes it's mud, in which it won't stay on the beach anyway, so you're wasting your time. Sometimes it's very coarse material,
like
shell
sandpaper.
hash, and worse than that, like rocks. Some years ago, one of the dredging companies made a big mistake up at Topsail Island, and they dredged up a fair amount of limestone rock, small rocks, it's about the size of your fist, and they put that stuff on the beach. And you can imagine what happened when people realized that their beach was full of rocks. There was a great hue and cry, and the hypothetical crowd of angry villagers with pitchforks and torches descended upon town hall and said, yea, verily, they must remove the rocks. And the company had to do that at great expense. They just made a big mistake in where they chose to get their material. I won't call it sand because it wasn't all sand.
And they didn't segregate it into what we can use and what we can't.
That's right. They didn't screen it the way they should have. And they had to go back and screen the stuff on the beach and remove all the rocks. And you can imagine how costly and time-consuming that was.
Yeah, the moose out front should have told you the beach is closed.
Yeah. So, finding beach-quality sand is the challenge. Not all the stuff you may find on the sea bottom should be on a recreational beach.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I thought, sand, dirt, it's all part of the same planet. You just throw some dirt here, throw some dirt there.
It varies quite a bit. You'd be surprised. And when you look offshore, and I've done a lot of scuba diving offshore, there's a sand bottom out there, but if you go to the bottom and do what I did, which is I burrowed into that sand with my hand, it's only a few inches thick in most places. You find limestone rock down there.
Wow.
So there's not these huge piles of sand lying all over the bottom. They're very thin veneers of sand in most cases, and it's not technically worth the effort to try and mine that stuff. And in addition to that, there are biological impacts. That sand bottom is productive in its own way. And so you've got to be very mindful of the collateral damage you're doing and the tremendous expense of trying to mine sand in a place where there just isn't much of it.
Oh, don't we have, private islands like Jeffrey Epstein's old island? Can't we just, just pull that up, throw it on a boat, and bring it over here?
The cost of transporting this stuff would be prohibitive. And plus, it's not the quartz sand that we have here. It's carbonate sand. And I don't think it would last long on our beach.
It would blow away? Is it just that light?
No, it would be ground to powder and then disappear.
Oh.
Yeah. And the cost of transporting that stuff is enormous. I mean, how much is a cubic yard of sand worth? Right now, it's I've heard about $35 a cubic yard.
At a cost of $3,500 to move it.
Yeah, something like that. So, you're not going to do that. An average beach nourishment project needs something like 500,000 to 1 million cubic yards of sand.
Ooh.
So, yeah, you do the math and you realize, wow.
What about those guys in Dubai that are making the Palm Tree Island thing?
Yeah, well, they're in the Persian Gulf.
And their stuff is sinking as fast as it can build it.
Yeah, and they've got plenty of sand up on land. It is the Saudi Arabian desert, and they're filthy rich. So they can afford to truck sand out there. I mean, my point about the Persian Gulf is that it's calm. You don't get wave action eroding all that stuff. We live in Hurricane Central here. If you put anything out on the beach and expect to find it next year, good luck.
Including your house, your car.
Well, right, all of the things you can imagine, right? They're going to be taken away. So we're fighting against nature, but we're doing it because we've got billions and billions of dollars worth of real estate and multi-billion-dollar tourism industry to support. So our choices are stark. That leads to looking around for local supplies of sand. So that's why the Cape Shoals become interesting. I've heard estimates of hundreds of millions of cubic yards out there, maybe more, maybe less. But we need to know how accessible that stuff is, what the collateral damage would be from mining it. Mining is not a benign operation.
No.
It disrupts, you dig big holes in things, what happens, right? We have to be mindful of the biology. No one has ever mined one of these Cape Shoals before. We do not know what the impacts would be. We can guess about some of the resources that we know are out there, and suppose perhaps that some of those might be affected. To give you one example, I was in a meeting a couple of years ago with Baum about this issue of frying pan shoals. We've been talking about it a long time. Many of the larvae and juvenile fishes and shrimps and other things that come into the Cape Fear River estuary as a nursery zone are migrating ashore from offshore right along the east or along the west side of frying pan shoals. Okay? And that's the nature of the circulation out there. It carries all those little baby fishes and shrimps and crabs back into the river along the shoals themselves. So if you're mining sand out there, when those things are trying to paddle ashore, what happens? We don't know. Maybe nothing, but we don't know. And we're not real clear on exactly when and where they show up, and we don't know anything about the potential impacts. So those are the kinds of questions that need to be answered. Of course, people fish out on the shoals. Would we displace commercial and recreational fishers? Possibly. Would there be navigational issues? Probably. The shoals are treacherous. There's a reason they call it Cape Fear.
I've always wondered.
Yeah. I've been out there, on diving expeditions, and it's real shallow a long way out. And if you are an unlucky or unwary navigator, you come to grief out there, especially when the wind is blowing hard and the waves are big. So you got to be very careful out there. It's not the kind of place where fools belong, let's put it that way.
Well, it's a good place to dispose of fools.
Yeah, that would be true. People have come to grief out there, and the ancient mariners back in the 1500s and 1600s had good reason to call it Cape Fear. You can be out of sight of land out there and run your ship aground, which is almost always a bad thing to do.
Unless you work for Cito.
Yeah, right. Well, they didn't have that back then.
Oh.
Right, yeah. You couldn't call for help. You were,
You were the help.
Yeah, you were in deep doo-doo if that happened. And some of that bottom that you hit out there is rock. So, means you put a hole in your boat and your boat's going to sink and you're going to go down with it. Even being hard aground on a sandy shoal with big waves being in the picture is bad.
Certainly with the boat not moving with the waves, that you just end up being smashed.
Yeah, it doesn't take long. Yeah. Cape Hatteras is famous as the graveyard of ships. graveyard of the Atlantic, and there are good reasons for that. But the other Cape Shoal regions are almost as deadly if you were an unwary navigator.
Now, a lot of this beach nourishment, like if we were to pull from the east side of that shoals, the frying pan shoals, it's not going to grow back. It's not like cutting down a tree and expecting the forest to recover.
Well, here's the thing. The Cape Shoals are there for a very good reason, or set of reasons, speaking as an oceanographer. The prevailing currents in Onslow Bay, that's the portion of the coastal ocean between Cape Lookout and Cape Fear, and in Long Bay, which is the portion of the coastal ocean from Cape Fear down to Cape Romaine, the circulation is counterclockwise. It's driven by friction with the Gulf Stream, and so the transport of sand is slow, but it's transporting sand from, in our case here, say at Wrightsville Beach, essentially from the Beaufort area down the coast towards Carolina Beach and off to Cape Fear and the Frying Pan Shoals. So over time, the longshore transport processes build those Cape Shoals. That's why there's so much sand there. Same thing is true up at Cape Lookout, only in that case the sand source is Raleigh Bay. So there is a replenishment of the Cape Shoal sand resource over time. We don't know how long that takes. It could be a matter of decades, could be a matter of centuries. Let's put it this way. I don't know. I'm not a coastal geologist. So we don't know the rate at which it would be replenished. And, that may or may not be a factor in our decisions about whether or not to mine sand out there. Chances are the fact alone that there's so much sand there right now is attractive enough for us to contemplate mining sand out that place. So, the rate of replenishment, well, we'll worry about that, in 50 years.
We'll worry about that next generation.
Yeah, that's right. We'll let the kids figure that out.
They got 40 years to get an education.
Beach nourishment is a here and now kind of problem. If your beach has eroded to the point where you're in trouble because of a hurricane or a northeaster, well, you need nourishment now, not 10 years from now.
Or a redress of your, what is the surveying needs to be redone. Oceanfront is 30 foot less.
And eventually you need to think about your tax base. I teach a coastal ocean science and policy course every other year here, and I tell my students in that class the coastal town manager's nightmare is, where am I going to get the money to fund the next beach nourishment project? That's the big problem, because if you don't find the money and the sand to put up on that beach and keep it where you want it to be, your town is in big trouble. Everything else is secondary to that.
My latest visit to Bald Head Island was eye-opening.
Yeah.
Because that whole end, we were at the Shoals Club, which is in the far southeast corner of it. And
right.
The entire eastern side, that whole... I used to not be able to see the beach from the sand dunes. Now the dunes are gone, and I can see the beach and the people on the beach as clear as I can see people in my parking lot.
Yeah, that portion of Bald Head Island has severely eroded, and that has been the subject of litigation, we'll put it that way.
Wow.
Bald Head Island blamed that loss of beachfront shoreline on the most recent shipping channel deepening project back in 2000, when they dredged the shipping channel for the Port of Wilmington from, I think it was 37 feet down to 42. Maybe it was 35 feet, but they deepened it to 42 feet. When you dig a deeper hole, the sides of the hole become steeper, and the hole becomes wider, and when the hole becomes wider, the stuff around the hole sloughs in. And they argued that the Corps of Engineers knew that was going to happen and did it anyway. Something to that effect. I don't think they got anywhere. It's rare that somebody sues the Corps of Engineers and succeeds. They're kind of like God. Try suing God sometime, and you'll have about as much luck as you have with the Corps.
Yeah.
They're a tough outfit. But Bald Head lost a great deal of ground on that southeast side. And you know, it's gone. They've since put in groins along the beach to help trap some of the sand that would otherwise wash into the hole. It's actually a trench.
Yeah. Much like they do in a construction zone where they try to manage the slope.
Yep.
To prevent cave-ins and such like that, but apparently we don't worry about it when it's underwater.
Exactly. It's much tougher because you can't see it. You've got to go out and do seismic surveys and look for where the bottom is.
You mean do the job that they were hired to do? Oh, my God.
Yeah.
That's a hell of an expectation. What are y'all thinking?
Yeah. Right. And I don't know if we've brought this up previously, but, you know, the Port of Wilmington is entertaining a plan to deepen the channel further from 42 feet to 48 and extend that channel farther offshore, because you got to go farther out to get 48 feet, and that's to accommodate bigger ships. And so the pucker factor at Bald Head Island and Oak Island and other places along the channel has gotten higher, we'll say. Yeah, 48-foot deep channel is not only going to be deeper, it's going to be wider by quite a bit. They try to achieve a certain slope on the sides, and so that means that the effective trench they're going to dig is going to be much bigger, deeper and wider all the way. And so there's a lot of concern about accelerated erosion along those coastline areas, up and down the river, and especially out at Bald Head.
We are still talking about the beaches, because for a second there I had a flashback. It sounded like you were talking about Trump's career. I'm sorry.
Totally different subject.
But the erosion is there, the depth and the being dredged and deepened and widened.
Yeah, deepening and widening. Yeah, that seems to be a theme running through our thoughts here today.
You can see how I'm distracted by that. It just took a second to make sure we were still.
Yeah, I'm trying very hard to stay focused on something that has to do with water. So I don't.
Because we haven't even gotten to the last one yet that I can't wait to get your thoughts on after the last 3 weeks, I guess.
Yeah. Right. So, and all these projects, the sand mining, beach nourishment, channel deepening, they all interact. I mean, they're all related to each other in that. There are human demands on the coastal region, whether it's tourism or beach property development or channel deepening for the port. And then you run up against, the limits of nature. How deep a hole can you dig before you start getting in trouble? And then you run into the nature of how the ocean itself is changing. I mean, sea level's rising. The data that I've downloaded from the tide gauge at Memorial Bridge shows at Wilmington we've seen 8 inches of sea level rise in the last 12 years.
That's pretty significant.
It's a lot. It's a lot more than anybody predicted.
Wow.
And it means that your erosion problem is going to be that much worse. And that's
now
regional.
You have basically the bowl that it can slosh in has risen.
Yeah.
So now you're
It's
sloshing.
bigger.
Yeah.
That's right.
Wow.
You add in extra sea level, and it makes your wave action, your storm effects, and all of those kinds of things that much worse. So it raises the cost and the nature of the challenge we have in keeping beaches nourished, in finding resources to do that with. Both money and sand means that nourishment will have to be more frequent. We're going to need more sand than we've had to use in the past, and we're kind of scraping for different sources of that sand. So there's a lot of change on the way, and we're just living it. So the day-to-day stuff that we experience kind of masks the fact that over the last couple decades, some very big changes have happened with regard to these issues. Beach nourishment, as I said, is one of the most, if not the most problematic factor for coastal town managers. It's pretty close. If you're going to do that job for very long, you're going to have to deal with beach erosion. And that's a real nightmare. It's very expensive. It's getting more difficult, and yet it's even more important as time goes on.
Now, how is beach nourishment and sand mining affected by things like wind turbines?
Well, not directly. The linkage there is that it's actually geographic. Frying Pan Shoals is also the location for one of the lease areas that BOEM is nominating for development of offshore wind energy. And they just had a lease sale back in May, and I think 2 companies were awarded leases. Now, let me explain a little background here. The ocean and the resources in the ocean and on the bottom out to 200 nautical miles belong to the United States. That is the people of the United States. The federal government is the steward. Within 3 miles of the beach, that's actually state territory, the territorial waters of the state of North Carolina. Some states have broader territorial waters than others, but North Carolina goes out 3 nautical miles. Beyond that 3-mile limit out to 200 nautical miles, it's the feds who have the stewardship responsibility. BOEM, the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, is charged with oversight of any development of those resources, and they have 2 charges. One is to promote responsible, and I'll put that in quotes.
Thank you.
Quote, responsible, unquote, development of those resources for the benefit of the people. They don't sell the water column or the bottom, they lease it. And as with anything else that is leased, the folks who do the leasing, the ones who obtain a lease for wind energy or oil exploration and production or sand mining, would pay the federal government for that lease. And so the royalties from that leasing go into the federal treasury. That is technically the public's pocketbook, right? Although, you aren't going to see any money from that in your pocket. What it does, it represents a source of federal revenue. And, if the system were perfect, it would mean that if they had a lot more money coming in from offshore leasing, they could lower taxes, blah, 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 blah. None of that will happen, but in theory, that's what's supposed to happen. This source of income for the people of the United States. And again, it's to promote the responsible development of these resources. The idea is that those who lease these resources will then use them for profit. So there's a profit motive in there as well. And sand mining, if they lease an area for sand mining, the idea is that the sand mining companies would sell that sand for a profit to beach communities and so on. In the case of wind turbines, the owners of those leases, and the leases have a finite clock on them, in addition to a bill. You're paying money for a period of time. You can renew the lease as long as you're using it. Most of those leases do have a use it or lose it provision. You can't just obtain a lease and sit on it. The idea, again, is to promote the public benefit, and that is that when the lease is used, you're generating revenue. So in the case of wind turbines, the owners of the lease would build these turbines, and subject to permitting and a whole lot of bureaucratic requirements, all important to protect the public's resources out there. And the wind turbines would then generate electricity that would be sold to the power companies and through them to their customers. I've been involved in this issue sort of off and on for many years. In 2009, I was appointed to a legislative studies subcommittee looking at offshore energy development for North Carolina. And initially, we were looking at offshore oil and gas, and we broadened that to look at wind energy because it began to be obvious that that was a thing that was coming to the United States. The Europeans are way ahead of us on this.
Mm-hmm. They have a lot less hang-up.
Yeah, I don't have the hard numbers in my head, but countries like Denmark and Britain and Germany are generating a very large portion of their total electricity demand from wind turbines out in the North Sea. I mean, that's a lot. It's a big number, and they keep building more of them. It's real windy there. North Carolina has some very windy places. The Outer Banks are famous for that, and if you get far enough off Frying Pan, there's plenty of wind out there as well. And, you know, the wind resource was fairly easy to document. There were actually 3 general areas off North Carolina that were judged to have a significant wind resource out in the ocean. One's off Kitty Hawk, and they're in the process of leasing that. Then there's the one off Frying Pan, and they're leasing, I think it's called Wilmington East. And then there was an area off Morehead City that's been taken off the table. I don't recall the exact reason for it, but I think there was some significant set of problems with that area. In any event, the wind resource is pretty good. You know, the physical people can tell you how much power can be generated out there, and it's somewhere up in the gigawatt range. To put that in perspective, the 2 nuclear reactors at Brunswick Steam Electric Plant, they call it the steam electric plant because the nuclear energy generates heat, which creates steam, which turns the turbines. They don't like to call it the nuke or the Brunswick nuclear plant. The term nuclear tends to be a little off-putting to people.
I think of, like, you know, weird toes and third arms.
Yeah, and all that stuff you saw in the movies, and most of which is not true. But in any event, you know. But to put things in perspective, those 2 reactors, when they're operating at full steam, so to speak, are generating somewhere in the order of 650 megawatts. Wow. A gigawatt is 1,000 times a megawatt. So if you've got a megawatt of wind energy offshore, you've got more energy than that nuclear power plant's producing at much less cost and virtually no environmental impact compared to nuclear. Bear in mind, with nuclear power, although it doesn't emit carbon, neither does wind energy, it does produce radioactive stuff.
And waste?
Yeah. The low-level stuff we don't worry about much. I have a radioactive materials license. The spent fuel rods are the big deal. They only consume a small portion of the total of the uranium in those fuel rods, but they become less efficient over time. And so the old rods are taken out and new rods are put in. The rods, by the way, are manufactured at the GE plant north of Wilmington up in Castle Hayne.
Mm.
Yeah.
And then when they're
a
spent,
lot
they
of
get shipped to
radioactive.
New Mexico and buried in my backyard.
Uh,
Or at least that was the plan. I think it got shot down.
Yeah, it did. It was Nevada. The United States has never figured out how to handle spent fuel rods. We call that high-level radioactive waste. We were going to bury that stuff out at a place called Yucca Mountain in Nevada, but the locals there raised holy hell.
NIMBY.
And yeah, very much. And their senator at the time, Harry Reid, was the Senate Majority Leader, and he quashed it after 20 years of development and billions of dollars spent doing it. So right now, the plan, the strategy, is to keep the nuclear fuel rods in storage at each nuclear reactor plant. So there are high-level radioactive waste fuel rods sitting there at Southport.
Nothing bad can happen to
cooling
that.
pools. Well, they're probably pretty secure. I'm not going to raise any alarms here, but, that's true across the country. Every nuclear plant is more or less storing its used fuel rods on site.
Well, that's fine when you first move into a house, but what happens to your closet after living in the house for a couple of years?
What happens 100 years from now?
We're going to end up with bunkers and bunkers of nothing but death.
Right. So,
but that's for the
wind
kids to worry
energy
about.
has the advantage, in the case of frying pan, coming back to that.
Please.
You could cable the electricity ashore to, Duke Energy's existing network of power lines and all that. I mean, you've got all these power lines coming out of the nuke plant, right? It's sitting right there. And so you can bring your energy ashore very easily and cheaply. And again, theoretically, as much as a gigawatt of power, which is a hell of a lot. Bear in mind, as people are no doubt aware, this region is developing rapidly. I mean, there's a lot more people, a lot more industry, and everybody wants electricity. And so generating more electricity is in the cards for the future. Matter of fact, I don't know if it's widely known, but the nuclear power plant in Brunswick is planning to add a third reactor. And that's the general strategy in the nuclear industry right now, is not to build new power plants where they haven't had one, but to expand the size of existing ones. And so what they're going to do, if everything eventuates the way I suspect it will, they're going to build a third reactor, take one of the old reactors offline, rebuild that, bring that online, then take the other reactor offline, replace that with a new one, and that'll bump the total generation capacity up to close to a gigawatt, 900 and some megawatts, okay? But that's going to take 10, 15 years. The wind power, if they build that, and I say if because, that may still fall apart, is about the same time frame, about 10 years. And it's going to be fairly far offshore. There were a lot of objections raised to the idea of building windmills close to shore, viewscape and all of that. And
which I don't even think is a legitimate term. The view shed will be ruined.
Yeah, oh God, windmills on the horizon.
What about the power lines and the asphalt ribbons with, there's, of all the functions and forms that are available on this planet, this one bothers me the least.
Well, I find it very ironic that the folks along the coast here are, objecting to the idea of a windmill offshore somewhere where they can barely see it. And they don't have a problem with a nuclear power plant in their backyard.
What is, just curious, because I don't spend a lot of time on the ocean. What is, on the best day, what is the best distance, viewable distance?
Yeah, 10 miles.
So if something is
at ground level, at ground level, if you can see 10 miles out at sea, you're doing real well.
So you're not going to see these things 26 miles offshore?
No. Between the visibility itself and the curvature of the Earth at that distance, even a 500-foot tall windmill is going to be essentially invisible. You might pick it up with binoculars on a really clear day, but, you know...
When I heard that argument, I just shook my head.
People are entitled to their opinions,
right?
You know,
even if they're wrong.
Okay. Yeah, it may be a matter of perception, and you know, what are the hard facts here? The hard fact is that the physics argues that at that distance you can't see them. There are other objections. I've talked to friends in the fishing industry, and there's a lot of concern about what those installations offshore would do. Some of those concerns, I think, may be legitimate in that, you know, you build windmills out there, and there's going to be some kind of a, you know, obviously if you're driving a boat, you want to pay attention and not hit one. You know.
Yeah.
Navigational
But that's true
issues,
of just about anything that's in the ocean, whether it's a bird,
well, that's
an
true.
island, a boat.
Right. I like to cite what I call Murphy's Law of boats. Unless a boat is driven by an absolutely sentient being who is fully aware of what's going on and paying close attention, you know, at 100% efficiency, that boat will inevitably collide with some object. It could be another vessel. It could be anything that you could hit with a boat will get hit.
Where did that island come from?
Yeah, right. Yeah. And, you know, so that's an issue. But, you know, if there's not an object out there to hit, boats will hit each other. I mean, you know,
it's almost like a magnet.
Facetious.
Like boat
I've
gravity.
had family die in boating accidents.
Oh.
Not collisions, but, you know, sinking, which is usually fatal. Fishing boat things. And, you know, I'm not cavalier about this, but the ocean is a cruel enough place without human stupidity and carelessness added in. Okay?
Yeah.
So, you know, when I hear people say, well, you know, what about collisions? I say, well, you know, people hit things with their cars. What are we going to do? We can't fix stupid. You know, these things are huge, and they're going to be, the pylon, you know, the central column is going to be surrounded by rocks. I think it actually makes a good place to go fishing, and the industry actually encourages that. They've been encouraged to put out special moorings so that you could moor near one safely and catch rock and reef associated fishes. Fish love structure. They love habitat. So I think, you know, the net effect on certain kinds of fishing anyway would be positive. I've heard concerns raised about the vibration from the turbines, and I've looked at the literature on that scientifically. As far as I can tell, there is no evidence of a vibration effect on fish from wind turbines. You know, fish get used to motorboat sounds, ship noises, dredging noises,
just like
all
we
kinds
do.
Of things. Yeah. They acclimate. If it's not harmful, they hang around. There's no evidence that there's any harm. Now, I would not object to that issue being studied directly. If we're going to start building wind turbines off the U.S. coast, I think, you know, there are some legitimate issues to study. And I'm not advocating on my own behalf because I'm going to retire in a few years, but I think, you know, there's an opportunity there to learn more and make sure that we're not screwing things up that we didn't know about. I mean, that's a hard lesson that we've learned many times. So I have no objection to studying the question, but I don't think that lack of knowledge and lack of any obvious mechanism to cause harm should stand in the way of proceeding, at least, with initial projects. If it turns out that there is harm, then we're going to change the way we handle this going forward, and we're going to find ways to mitigate that. But if there's no harm, then we're good. So compared to other energy sources, I'd say that the collateral damage, the externalities, if you will, from offshore wind is probably pretty low. What could go wrong with nuclear power?
Daiichi.
I will leave that question open. What could go wrong with coal as a source of energy? Well, we know very well what went wrong with coal and why we're trying to get rid of that as a power source. Coal ash spills, mercury in the atmosphere, global warming,
bituminous
air pollution.
What do they call that? What Chemours is doing with their air stuff when you spit it out the top? What's that called?
Scrubbing?
Well, if you don't scrub and it just...
polluting the air shed.
That stuff, yeah.
Yeah, right.
That'll never happen here.
When the Sutton electric plant was converted from coal to natural gas, all of a sudden the mercury emissions from that plant went away. Ooh. And mercury was coming down all over our landscape here because coal contains mercury, among other things.
Bonus.
Yeah, and the coal ash problem is being addressed. Duke Power and other companies that generate lots of coal ash have been forced to clean up a lot of that. There were some big coal ash spills into rivers, and, lots of nastiness associated with that. And coal ash contains all kinds of horrifying carcinogens and toxic things. So cleaning that mess up made a lot of sense, but it's after the fact.
Yeah, a little late now.
Yeah.
The fish are already, upside down and belly up.
Right. And so, I don't think anybody's worried about a wind spill.
Or a solar spill.
Right, yeah, exactly.
But I'm waiting for the day some big alien comes along and does to us what we've been doing to all these little macrocosms. It's like, oh, shoot, there's, 400 million humans dead on my little terrarium.
Yeah, I have a feeling they would probably treat us the same way that we've treated everything and everyone else. The
Does not give me hope.
Colonization is not a sunny one. Even if the intent is not to harm, the side effects are often pretty lethal.
We're trying to save our race, but at the same time, it's going to cost you yours.
Yeah. There are plenty of examples of our tendency to do that. Yeah. Conquer first, regret later.
Rewrite history later.
Well, that too, yeah. And, we do all kinds of collateral damage, and it's, look what a mess we've made. Like mountaintop coal mining in West Virginia.
I'm glad that wasn't my home.
Yeah.
That dude's going to be mad.
Yeah. It's not all bad necessarily. I mean, we wanted electricity to develop, and we did, and others do that. I think we can do better than that. We know better. We can do better, and we can do it more cheaply. Wind energy is not that expensive, really. When you think about the cost of building a gigawatt-sized nuclear power plant, think in terms of tens of billions of dollars. It's going to cost a lot less than that to build a gigawatt-sized wind farm off North Carolina. And if you're in the insurance business, you might be willing to insure a wind turbine operation against, all forms of liability and damage. hurricanes and other such things, but no private insurer will insure a nuclear power plant. Guess who does the insurance for nuclear power plants?
The government or the Atomic Energy Commission?
The federal government. That means you and I, as taxpayers, are going to pay for any problem associated with a nuclear accident. We're the ultimate insurers because, of course, we have deep pockets, right?
Now, is this by finance or by physical body? Because the human body, right? If you were to take 500,000 people and line them around the nuclear facility, you wouldn't have a nuclear spill because all the human bodies would absorb it.
No, it passes right through.
Even after it damages the DNA and the cellular structure, it keeps going?
Yeah. Gamma radiation punches right through pretty much everything except, a very thick amount of lead or, thick amount of mass. It's a gift that never stops giving. But, we're kind of getting off on that tangent. But, again, my point is nuclear power is so potentially dangerous. If you have an accident, it's going to cost many tens of billions of dollars to deal with it. Ask the Japanese what it's costing them to fix the reactors and all the damage they caused over at Fukushima. You're looking at 40 or 50 years' worth of effort and hundreds of billions of dollars. And, no private enterprise can pay that. It falls down on, in this case, the Japanese taxpayers. In the case of an accident here in the United States, it falls on the federal government, therefore on us, the American taxpayers. Whereas, when it's a different energy source, it's covered by private insurance. So, that tells you something about the nature of the risk involved. And nobody is going to tell you that any industry is accident-proof. It's perfectly safe. We've learned the hard way that's just not true. If something can happen, it will. It's a matter of when. I think nuclear energy has its benefits, but bear in mind that the downsides, although unusual and unlikely, are horrific. So, I don't see expanding nuclear power as the ultimate answer for our energy demands. I think there are renewable energy sources out there that can be tapped much more safely, much more efficiently, and with much more environmental benefit.
That makes perfect sense, and that's why we have Dr. Cahoon joining us every Wednesday to help decipher some of the misinformation or, information with lots of gaps in it. To help us understand that just by looking at one component, right, who is willing to back this by saying, like with insurance, that right there would tell me, you know what, if nobody wants to insure this, I probably don't want to get involved.
It tells you about the nature of the liability. Yeah. And I try to point that out to folks in a lot of different contexts. Think about what the big-time insurers do, not your local, Allstate agent, but the reinsurance companies, the shadowy outfits that ultimately back up the frontline insurance companies, Lloyd's of London, Swiss Re, and others like that. Those are, by and large, funded by private investors who put a lot of money in there and are basically gambling that the premiums they receive will be larger than the payouts they'll have to make.
If they have to make a payout, because if they can do things like say, oh, look, that wasn't our fault, loophole.
Well, they also are gambling based on their risk assessment. How much risk do I have? If the risk seems high, the premiums will be high. If the risk is unknowable, in other words, you don't know what your likelihood is of being forced to make a payout, that's a pretty bad gamble.
I think that's what market bear, meaning if I can ask you for the money and you'll pay it, we're good. Yep. And it'll never
That's
ever have to pay out because I have so many high-power lawyers.
Yeah. Well, they can fight that stuff, but, if that happens, if they don't pay out, then, they basically shut down that whole segment.
Because we're watching that unfold in real time with ChemWars, right?
Yeah, to some degree.
So it might take 20, 30 years, 40 years.
Yeah, I don't know what their insurance coverage is like, but as a matter of fact, I haven't even heard that discussion. I do know that ChemWars is suing DuPont because DuPont didn't give ChemWars enough money to cover the liability from the accidents that they were led to believe could happen. I think DuPont only gave them $2 million to cover, environmental risk, and the real liabilities in the hundreds of millions of dollars.
Wait a minute,
so
$2 million? Mad. They give the guy $10 million a year in a bonus alone, and they couldn't.
Yeah.
200. God, this is more nauseating every time that subject pops open.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh man,
it comes down to fighting over big money. So.
And the more I want to dig is unfortunate. We're 22 minutes over the hour. Because more of it just keeps. It's like digging a hole underwater. Right. It just keeps getting.
These issues, they're like wormholes. You can keep going through them and through them and through them, and you may never really pop out at an end, but you keep going, and it's a fascinating journey.
But as long as we're on Facebook making 5-word memes, we can put all of this into one simple, sarcastic response. That's going to cure everything.
Right. I wish it were that easy, There's no substitute for hard work and paying attention.
Yeah, there is. I'm not sure what it is, but everybody else is doing it.
Okay. I thought you had pithy words of wisdom here.
No, I'm still with you, but some of these cats, they just wake up and are good-looking and healthy and successful and rich and popular and have the answers to everything, and I'm just amazed. I don't know how they do it.
Yeah. Yep. Well, sometimes the public wasn't paying attention, and sometimes the people we entrust with stewardship weren't paying attention, or worse.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, I have to go. If you're around tomorrow or Friday, I may check in with a little bit more information.
Sure, that would be fine. You know my number.
I'll send you a message and see what we come up with.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you so much again for your time this morning, and ladies and gentlemen, thanks for hanging out while we run right over the clock. We just smashed that thing like a speed bump. So with that in mind, I'm going to fire some music. Watch it. Oh, missed. There it is. With that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, the Asylum, your refuge in a world gone mad, will be back tomorrow. Right now, I'm going to unflood my driveway so I can go to work. So with that in mind, be good to each other and do not steal the sand. We need it.
Hello, I'm Matt Bennett with WWAY News. Wilmington police have made an arrest in a weekend homicide. It happened Saturday night around 10:45 in the 1500 block of South 11th Street. Officers responding to the scene found 20-year-old